Yeah.
Very nice. Sounded great, Djordje. Not easy to do early in the morning.
Pretty early here. It's 11.
No bass playing before noon. That's the rule, right?
Well, I guess we could just start it off with, if anybody has questions or want to chime in, feel free.
Maybe we should introduce ourselves first.
Sure, we can introduce ourselves.
Since I'm interrupting, I'll go ahead and start. My name's Kevin Smith. Been playing bass for a long time. Had a lot of cool gigs. Got to play a lot of slap bass in bands like High Noon with a guy named Browne Dawson. So that's who I am. Who's next? Maybe Nicolas?
Nicola, are you still? I don't know if we're hearing him. No. Beau, you can go next.
Yeah, my name is Beau Sample, and I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas. Lived in Austin for quite a while, maybe 4 or 5 years, and now I live in Chicago. And played around with a band called Cave Cat Sammy when I was in high school, and then the Hot Club of Cowtown, and a bunch of other bands from Austin. And now I live in Chicago and play with a group called the Fat Babies and Joel Patterson and the Modern Sounds. Kind of play a bunch of different old styles, jazz and blues and country and whatnot. Next.
All right. Well, Djordje, you're next with me on my screen.
Well, I'm Djordje Stijepovic. I'm from Belgrade, Serbia. I moved to the States first to San Francisco from Belgrade, and then now I'm in Los Angeles. I've been playing bass for 25 years, something like 30 years. No, 30 years. And right now I'm with Tiger Army. I used to play in a band with Lemmy called Headcat and Drake Bell. I played with Drake Bell still. Used to have a band, Fish Tank Ensemble, and I do a fair amount of solo work as well. That's it.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, Ryan.
You're muted.
Ryan.
We can't hear you, Ryan.
Sorry, I didn't unmute. I'm Ryan Gould. I live in Austin I have lived in Austin for the last 20 years. I play with all sorts of bands that are doing 20s and 30s jazz. Currently, Rock Step Elevators, the Texas Moaners. Worked with John Doyle, as has Beau down there below me on my screen. Yeah, bunch of 20s and 30s jazz, early jazz and swing, and that's what I do. And for the record, Kevin, Beau, and myself started the Austin Bass Hangs 20 years ago next year, and this is essentially the first time the three of us have been in the same room doing a bass hang for I don't know how long, 19 years maybe, Beau? When did you leave town?
Yeah.
What year did you leave, Beau?
I'm sorry?
What year did you leave Austin?
2007.
Wow.
Later.
Yeah. Nice to be back with you guys.
The bass hang tradition is still happening, which is great. I guess, Alex, you want to do a little intro?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Don't mind me. I'm a fly on the wall. My name is Alex. I've been a part of the Austin Bass Hang for a couple of years. Primarily, when it comes to upright, I'm kind of a bebopper, but I'm curious to see what everyone has to say. And I'll kind of be directing traffic as far as questions. So if for the attendees, if you want to just kind of type your questions into the Q&A section on the bottom, I'll try and direct those and pick the best ones and the ones we have time for, or in the webinar chat. So does that kind of answer everyone's question? Is that good? Cool.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks. Don't mind me.
Mention
Is Nicola still muted?
Yeah, he's He's actually muted on his screen, but I think his microphone is not working.
Oh, all right. So for Nicole, are you able to talk so we can hear you or not? Not yet. Well, whoever is not familiar with Nicolas Dubouchet, I'd like to introduce him. He's excellent bass slapper from France. He lives in Bordeaux, and his primary interest is in old school music, old school rockabilly, and old school jazz. I think these days it's mostly jazz. He played with all kinds of bands, mostly in, or I think completely in France. And I think that Charla is his most famous band, but he can, if he's not able to tell us that live, he can maybe chat and remind us. And so you should check him out if you're not familiar with him. He's the first star of the Art of Slap Bass website as well. So if you're not familiar with his playing, go to YouTube and check him out.
Nice. Yeah. But speaking of YouTube, we can talk a little about that. How you and Nicola both kind of, that's how I heard of both of you guys. I don't know if you want to talk about like a little how it helped your career and, you know, getting views on YouTube and what are you doing now to kind of sustain that?
Who did you ask? Sorry.
You?
Oh, you mean?
Well, I mean, I think what he had Atomic Boogie was like what 14, 15 years ago.
That's like,
and it kind of exploded.
One of the first bass videos in YouTube. Well, that one was kind of funny. Like there was a website called rockabillybass.com. Some of you probably remember that one. And the guy, Sean, who was running the website, he's like, hey, you're a good bass player and I would like to interview you, but I don't have a clue how can I introduce you to the American audience. So there's a new website called YouTube, so you should check it out and upload your video. And I'm like, okay, so maybe I'll try that. So I shot Atomic Boogie, which is kind of like a boogie woogie 12-bar or 24-bar blues, and with a little pizzicato and a little slap. And that was the first one. And it pretty much like ever since, you know, there's always some kid in the audience that asked me after a show about Atomic Boogie, which is great. And I did not work much on my own presence on YouTube after that until recently. I was trying during that. I got like lots of views very quickly on, which was, I don't know, maybe kind of important on Atomic Boogie. So I figured, hey, maybe I should feature other bass players now so that everybody gets like lots of attention. So I started Art of Slap Bass and started featuring other bass players, which turned out really good. And I had lots of energy, enthusiasm for a few years. And then I started touring like crazy and life happened. And so I kind of stopped doing YouTube for quite a few years. And then last year, maybe I started doing more of that. I posted Kevin's video on the Art of Slap Bass and on Bull Fiddle Cat YouTube channel. And I started doing a series Slap Bass Sunday, which I where I play kind of like a famous themes, just like with slap bass, so that I can kind of grab attention of like normal people or regular bass players, just like make them aware that slap is just a technique, that you can use it in any genre. It's not just rockabilly or country or gypsy, whatever technique, so that you can use it in any genre, that you can combine, make your own style, and also try to make it kind of interesting because I chose kind of popular themes.
Djordje, if it's okay, if you could elaborate on that a little bit, with you, I noticed you use a lot of like kind of Eastern European musical styles with slap. Could you talk maybe how you apply that to maybe music from your home country?
Sure. I mean, when I started researching, I got into rockabilly, into the slap just because of rockabilly when I was 9 or 10, and I got into the Stray Cats and Elvis, and I was like, oh, this is the coolest sound. And I started playing bass year or two later, and I just wanted to be better at it. So I got into classical music school, then jazz music school, and then I was not really into modern jazz. And I was like, okay, I love jazz, what I thought was jazz, but you know, everybody around me likes some different type of jazz that I'm not really fond of. And I kind of forced myself, like for a couple of years, right, I'm just gonna listen to fusion. I'm just gonna listen to smart music. I'm not gonna listen to any hillbilly stuff. But that didn't last too long. I was like, you know, I really prefer, you know, listening to Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington over Chick Corea, or, you know, or whoever, like from modern guys. So, I mean, modern guys. Chick Corea is not modern anymore. But anyway, so I realized there's lots of slap in those old recordings. And then I joined a Balkan band, which we play lots of odd time signatures, which was the piece that I did at the beginning is in 7/8. So then I discovered Tarev the Haiduks when I was, I don't know, 16 or 17. And then I became friends with the bass player, and then we exchanged some licks. And then I realized, all right, I can use my rockabilly licks when I play 9/8, and then I can use all these like Romani licks when I play New Orleans jazz, and I kind of like just combined it. But I love playing Balkan music, and I love playing, in general, lots of different gypsy music, being that gypsy jazz or flamenco or Balkan, whatever comes my way.
Cool. Very good. Well, I guess it's just for everyone. Like, what drew you to slap bass? I know everyone mentions that, like, picked up upright bass and were just drawn to the sound of slap bass. So if whoever wants to chime in, like, what drew you to the sound? Was it the sound or the look, or?
I heard that guy Kevin Smith.
I think that was all of us.
I thought he was the drums, as Martin Banks once said. I thought, man, those guys, that drummer and bass player, sure have their act worked out.
It was me in a top.
And then it was all over. Thanks, Kevin. You ruined my life.
Where's my check? Actually, I owe you a check now. I'll say that.
Oh, good.
As I was getting into traditional music when I was a teenager, hearing records, you know, of course, the Stray Cats, hearing the slap bass on there and not really knowing what was going on, and Johnny Cash and early Elvis stuff. And I just didn't know what was going on. So I was watching a TV show called Private Eye. I believe Chris Isaac was on this TV show, and they had Lee Rocker as a guest. And they had one shot where they showed him doing some slap stuff. And I was like, that's that sound right there. That changed everything for me. I was like, well, so you can do that. And then later on, I saw Thomas Yearsley playing an upright bass in a nightclub through an amplifier, which I didn't know you could do. And those two things really kind of brought everything together. And I was like, wow, you can make that sound that's in all that great traditional music on an upright bass, and you can play an upright bass in a nightclub. So that just, there it was everything. That was all of it.
Yeah, I was playing I kind of got interested in playing music through a family friend. My dad's best friend is an electric bass player, and they played all this old Hank Williams stuff and Johnny Cash and old country and rock and roll. And I kind of emulated him for a while, but listening to those old records, I wanted to get the sound that I was hearing on, like, Bill Black playing on Elvis records and Cash stuff. But it was definitely, there were two like pivotal records I got when I was first learning how to do it, and it was Strange Rings with High Noon with Kevin playing bass, and then a bunch of Wayne Hancock, the first couple of Wayne Hancock records, which had Kevin and Rick Ramirez. And then I basically went and I was living in San Antonio and Rick was in San Antonio, so I would go to see him anytime I could, but I was really young. I was like 15 or 16. So it's like the classic story of I'd stand outside next to the window of, North St. Mary's Brewing Company and listen to Rick But yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell. But then, of course, like a lot of people, starting off listening to old Western swing and country and rock and roll and rockabilly, and then trying to figure out who those guys were listening to, and just delving backwards and backwards and backwards, and kind of broadening my horizons. But Kevin was definitely the first one that gave me his undivided attention and complete, like, just very generous. It was, I don't want to blow smoke this whole time to Kevin Smith, but but it is true as far as someone that actually, the first guy that would actually tell me, like, here's what you do, here's what I use, try this. And so that definitely was a great launching pad for me. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think Kevin, for all of us, I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the ungentle art of slap bass. But Djordje, did you want to chime in here?
Sure. Like for me, it was primarily the Stray Cats and Bill Black from Elvis and all the rockabilly cats, and also like one bass player called Veljko from my hometown in Belgrade rockabilly band called Vera Kvark. He was playing on the street like with a long pompadour, like kind of like completely Stray Cat style. He was kind of like my first bass hero that meant when I saw him, I knew like, oh, this is what I wanted to do. So when you mentioned, was it the sound or the look? It was not the look for me, but kind of like the cool factor, that kind of like that the whole sound, the sound and the cool factor was the main thing for me. What drew me into it. And then like when we all love Kevin, and I remember I was living in Serbia at that time, so I haven't heard about Kevin and High Noon until kind of late. I was already playing for 6-7 years, I think. And I got the Stranger Things record, which I was like super impressed. I was like, oh yeah, finally somebody plays like something different, and it's rockabilly, but it's not Lee Rocker, and it's not just like copying somebody else. It's somebody who had, his own style, his own sound, and I was kind of always drawn like to people like that who had their own people that were kind of real deal in my book. And Kevin was definitely one of those. And I got the VHS from, I think it was from Mark Rubin's website, and which was, I have to mention, it was like pain in the butt to get because I was living in Serbia under sanctions and it was no possible to get anything. So, just getting, that VHS or Pops Foster's book or Milt Hinton's book, it was just a nightmare. You had to find somebody that lived in the States and then order it and then bring it somehow. But I was very excited about hearing anything that I could lay my hands on, and thank you, Kevin.
Ryan?
Yeah, it's kind of funny how we all go back to Kevin and myself. It's like, and how gracious he was, because back, I remember getting the Ungentle Art, and I had to get it on VHS, and I think it was like $80. So just seeing how someone actually did it, it's like, how the hell how are you figuring it out? And he was very gracious, and Ryan too. When I moved to Austin in 2005 and met Ryan, he was very gracious about showing technique and getting together, and yeah, there it is. Is there any sequel in the makes, Kevin, or?
At this point, no. What else is there to be said? It really, like, to me, and I believe that we say this on the videos, there's basically 3 rudiments that when I teach somebody, they want to learn how to slap, I teach 3 different things. Let me get my bass, and I'm just going to really quickly go over just a couple things that, let me see here. This is, I teach somebody, this is mainly what I would teach. There's, you've got the learn how to grab the strings. You can use one finger. You can use your side of your hand to hit like that. I use 3 fingers and smack, so that you've got a good solid hit. You've got you can do that single slap. You can put a note slap in between each note. You can put 2 slaps in between each note. And then you can also take the 2 slaps, make the note timing equal with the note and the slap, so it's like a triplet. So that's basically those 3 things I consider to be the
Since you have your bass, do you want to play something while you have it?
I will give it a shot.
Play something.
I'm a huge Western swing fan, so I've for a couple days, not very long, I'm making a disclaimer here. I've been goofing around with Sweet Jenny Lee, which is an old Western swing. So let's see if I can get what it is.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I have a
Hey,
question. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, hey, Kevin, quite a few people have asked if there's a way to get your DVD or the Artist Slap bass on VHS or DVD. Do you have it readily available?
Not right this second, but I will within a few weeks. So when I do have it, I will for sure put it on my Facebook and make sure that everybody can find out about it.
Nice. Beau, did you have something?
Yeah, I kind of have like a question for everybody generally. If your slap style has changed over the length of your career, or if it's basically kind of how it was in its like beginning, or as an extension of that, if you've like tried to change it, tried to consciously, tweak your style or your technique or your approach. Anybody who wants to answer that? Brian?
I'd say that
You're muted.
I muted and unmuted. I feel like mine hasn't changed. I feel like it's the same as basically, from staring at every bass player that came through New York and DC when I first started playing and got a hold of, or I'd played for a while and then finally got Kevin's video, and it lined up with a lot of what I was seeing, and most of those bass players were coming from Austin anyway, so I'm sure there was just something in the water. Everyone was staring at Kevin's hand. But there's a certain amount of, like, I feel like the way Kevin was doing it was very efficient from a movement standpoint. So that's where I've been. I feel like it hasn't changed much, but the thing that has changed is just that it's that I've found ways to make it more relaxed, more effortless, and all just through an exploration of body mechanics and constantly trying to reframe every note into a more relaxed place.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I think mine has evolved for sure, and maybe that's just, maturing or experience. I have no idea, but I feel like I'm way less, like I watched a video of a punk rock bluegrass band that I was in like 97 or something. And you can see how tense and ridiculous my entire right arm, my shoulder, my neck, even in my hip, I can see it. It's just all like crunched over, I'm basically trying to cripple myself and strangle my entire body,
Mm-hmm.
trying to play faster. And then, fast forward, almost a decade later, and I'm playing with Eric Hogan, and playing at 350 per minute, and going for 7 minutes at a time. There's no way I'm going to be able to play like that without being as extremely relaxed as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, experience whatever, but I've worked consciously to become more and more relaxed, and with every note, with every gig, with every practice I do.
When you listen back to recordings of yourself, do you ever find things that you used to be able to do that you can't do anymore? I mean,
well, I listened back about 2.5 months ago. I don't feel like I can do anything right now, despite, I actually feel like I'm practicing way more than I have in the last 2.5 months, but without gigs, it's crazy. I mean, all of us play gigs constantly, so I think without that, we're just kind of like fishing.
yeah.
I did actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I just found some old live recordings of a band that I was in 2000 through 2003. I think Shorty Long was a ukulele band. And I feel like my triplets back then, like runs of triplets, were super precise and clean back then. And I don't feel like mine are that clean anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be because I'm not that entertained by, like my musical choices don't default to triplets quite as much anymore.
I'm in the same exact thing for me.
Nice. Well,
I mean, it's probably the style. It's probably the style that we're playing, more old.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff I'm playing now is more like single note, I'm thinking of like Bill Johnson and dum, 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 and less like hitting the fingerboard. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't be practicing that stuff.
So I've learned on my own. Who else? I'm curious. That same question, everybody else.
Djordje?
Well, my style definitely changed. When I started, I was just like my resources were very limited. As I said, like we were under sanctions, so there was like no internet at that time, so you could find like some books, but there was obviously no slap. And there was not really, except the guy that I mentioned, Veljko, there was not really anybody else that I could see doing it. So I kind of had to create my own style, just from watching like VHS recordings from the rockabilly people from the 50s, and the Stray Cats and the Psychobilly, and then later on all the gypsy guys. But definitely changed because I just always wanted to learn whatever I hear, even if I don't like it. Even if I don't like it, I try to learn how to do it, and then I want to decide not to use that particular pattern. So I try to I think it's changed a lot, because also the bands that I've been playing with, Fish Tank Ensemble was very very artistic, very creative. And then right after that, or right before that, I was in a band with Lemmy, which was very straightforward and very simple. You couldn't play anything too creative on the bass. And then later on with Tiger Army, it's also a little different, because you have lots of freedom when you do solos, but when you don't play solos, it's kind of like a pop approach, when you really have to play what's on the record, but you have to find your own voice. So I think that my style changes every time when I join a different band. But when I play solo, I guess that's what I want to do the most, or I guess that's kind of like my thing. Then I just try to emulate all those styles, and then play like a couple of surf tunes, and then like a Bulgarian dance, and then a Serbian song, and then I wrote. It's usually all original music, and there's a little piece that I play in that it's in Samai form, which is Turkish classical form. in 10/4, and then my mind is over there, but I try to kind of like make it my own. So when people come like to see my solo shows, they're not like just, oh, like this is like a medley of 10 different bands. I want to have like one sound. And somebody asked like before, so it's usually the shows are like with a backup band, like a piano and drums and guitar, kind of like a jazz combo, but like playing these. It's not rock. It's not full on loud rock and roll show like Tiger Army, but it's. I try to have that a little bit of that rock and roll approach with all these different styles. So my style of playing definitely changed, and I think it's changing all the time, and definitely changed like these last few months while I'm not playing at all. All my tours have been canceled like everyone else's. So I think that affects me a lot. But I'm thinking about the different things. I want to create like finally I'm putting effort to create like a slap bass course and online or digital. I mean, I'll see how that's gonna go. And I'm thinking about new projects and new music. I write fair amount, so all that affects my playing.
Do you want to give us another example of playing since there's more people here?
Who, me again?
Yeah.
Well,
maybe just give us a little something.
Well, you asked about, since first time I played the odd time signature tune in 7, which is a Rachenica form. Whoever is interested, it's a Bulgarian form. And you mentioned, or somebody mentioned Atomic Boogie, so I can do a little bit of that. Do you hear this fine? All right.
Very nice. That's
I
right.
Djordje.
play without the audience.
I have a question for Djordje. What is it? Are you using these 3 fingers when you slap?
Well, I mostly use these 2.
I
And
see.
Sometimes I use this one. It's really, well, actually, let me grab the bass again. So, if I play something that I want to have like a stronger punch, like more punk or rock and roll, I would use these 2 fingers. So it's. And if I want to have like a little bit something like more swing, or if I play some kind of rhythm changes, I think that I would use mostly these. So. And if I play double stops, it will be these 2. So.
Yeah. Which ones?
sometimes if I play, which is not that often, but like, if I want to do 3 notes, then it's this, but it's different. I realize it's a different position. It's like usually I'm trying to put on the camera. So it's like this. And if I play fast, if I have to play something for Tiger Army, it's usually, I realize I play with these as well, but it's a little different position than when the swing, it's like sometimes even one, like a Milt Hinton style. But like if it's something fast, it's usually these two, but a little different position. So, and sometimes even just the middle finger. So I think it changes. Like depending on the style.
Yeah.
What do you use?
What's that?
What do you use, Beau?
I kind of changed it around a bit. I use mainly these 2 fingers. I can show you. It kind of depends. Yeah, it depends also what kind of thing I'm doing. Let's see. Maybe I'll try to do this. Does that work?
Sure.
I tend to use, especially if, like a lot of the stuff I've been working on lately is like playing melodies with single note. My screen just changed. Are you guys still there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's perfect.
If I start doing single, kind of change back and forth between when I'm doing more like this, like when I tend to do like almost like Kevin, where it's like 3 fingers. I don't know if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I'm turning my hand more like this. But if I'm playing bass, I'm playing single note. I don't know if that's making sense, but my hand, I tend to always use these 2 fingers.
Well, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. And by the way, I think the first time I heard, I learned "Mean to Me" from like a recording that Ryan gave me of Milt Hinton doing it, like 100 years ago. That was mean to me.
Well, speaking of Milt Hinton, I don't know. We could talk more about like the early, just how slap became. And I was thinking back with no amplifications, I think slap is like a necessity to be heard over the band. And there's a quote that says Milt Hinton said, the bass player had better play his solos in the slap style or else he will never get another one. And I don't know if you guys want to start talking about, some Pop Fosters or early jazz and where like the origins of slap you think came from. Anyone? Ryan, I'm sure.
Ryan?
I was waiting whether it's going to be Djordje or me.
I don't want to talk too much.
I want you to talk the whole time. So I'll let Djordje talk about the Eastern European stuff, but I mean, like Milton Hinton and Pops Foster both credited Bill Johnson as the first guy who was slapping. And of course, there's all of this mythology about how you know, he either broke his bow on a gig and had to start slapping, or he left his bow somewhere behind and had to start slapping. I think if you play that stuff enough, you start learning. You can kind of apply your own experience to what had probably happened. Apart from the mythology, I mean, Bill Johnson was hugely important to jazz, without even getting into slap. But his slap style was real. Was, like Beau said, just a lot of quarter note, or a lot of just, you know, snapping or whatever we're going to agree to with terminology. But he wasn't like dropping his hand on the fingerboard. Although I did just read a quote somewhere from Milton Hinton. There's a quote in Gushy's book about the Pioneers of Jazz is the name of the book, about the original Creole Orchestra, which was Bill Johnson's band. And he was saying that Bill Johnson actually used the side of his hand. I can't remember the exact quote, but he was basically saying he was using the side of his hand to create triplets, which I've never heard in Bill Johnson's. Like, I've never heard him actually do percussive slap, and it's just all been the snap, or the pluck, whatever we're going to call it. But you know, he was doing quarter notes and eighth notes and little 16th note jams every once in a while. So that's one of my arguments for you, Alex, when you asked the question about like soloing and like advanced soloing around Blanton and Crosby.
Israel Crosby.
Yeah, from last week. So he was doing all that stuff, plucking, or, you know, like slapping, as far as I'm concerned. And then that kind of evolved into what cats were doing in New Orleans. Plus, Bill Johnson was touring. He was touring the States extensively. He was in LA in like 1910, something like that. It, like, real early on, before anyone's gonna credit jazz for being alive yet, which that's a whole other argument. But he went out there. He came back to New Orleans. He went up to Chicago, and that's where he landed. And all of these places, we start seeing slap bass happen. So he may not have invented it, whatever. I know Djordje is going to argue with me just at least a little bit, and that's cool. I could use a little argument, but he was definitely a massively important slap bass player, and definitely one of the first. And that, like, to me, like, I'm really hip to New Orleans players. So, and the big ones that came out of New Orleans were obviously, you know, Pops Foster and Wellman Browne. So I don't know. You want to take it from there, Beau? You got it. You got as much experience in this stuff as I do. I would argue. Beau, you're muted.
One of the things that I think is I find myself constantly arguing with is the whole idea that, like, you know, tuba is old school and bass is new, which I'm sure it's the same kind of thing. But it's like in New Orleans, these guys were like using bass all the time, and like you said, anyway, it's an old argument. But I mean, I also think Steve Browne was really influential as far as being put just in front of a band as a famous bass soloist, which was, like, you know, kind of unbelievable at that time that they would put him down in the front of the Gene Goldcat Orchestra. But yeah, I mean, in town. I'm a big fan of Jim Lanigan that played. He was the guy. He was really influenced by Bill Johnson, all those Austin High Gang guys, the like white young Chicagoans that were sneaking out at night and going to see all the great musicians up from New Orleans. Jim Lanigan's a really interesting person to check out if any of you guys out there have never listened to him, because I have this inclination toward people that, like, first of all, he was an amazing jazz slap bass player who was kind of, really, really remarkable, had his own, I think he had his own style, definitely. But then he also was a member of the Chicago Symphony, which blows my mind that he would be recording with, Frank Teschmacher and all these like Bud Freeman and Gene Krupa and Dave Tuff, and then go and play concerts with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Yeah, definitely all the New Orleans guys were a big influence when they got to Chicago. That's all I got.
Djordje?
Sure. Well, I'm not going to argue too much with Ryan. I agree that about Bill Johnson. I mean, it's kind of impossible to say who was the first guy. Whoever had a chance like to go to New Orleans and to Tulane University, there's the jazz archives over there, and you can listen to the interviews of all these bass players, which I did, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. And those are long and boring, but they're great because they last like 5-6 hours, and they're going to talk like for a few minutes about bass, which was the kind of the thing that I wanted to hear. But anyway, like they kind of all argue who was the first guy that started. Some people say Steve Browne, some people say Bill Johnson. Milt Hinton was definitely hip on Steve Browne. Even he mentioned like quite a few times that Bill Johnson was the first guy. And there's that legend, what Ryan mentioned, when Johnson broke his bow in Louisiana, Shreveport, I believe. But the earliest example or like document that I found of slap being written or recorded, in this case written, is from 1915 when Bill Johnson went to New York and played with Kid Ory over there, and then like a day later, like newspapers mentioned like something like slapping and like that. So they were describing the technique. So I think that first description was definitely from him. And when we talk about Eastern European influences, for a long time, I thought that was kind of the standard, the regular bass playing in Romanian or Hungarian. I mean, borders were changing at that time, at the turn of the century, 20th century. So I thought that guys were playing bass over there because it really makes sense. You listen to Bela Bartok's, especially I think the fourth string quartet, in the last movement, he's using what's now called Bartok pizzicato, but he never used it on bass. He always used it on viola and violin, viola, and cello. There's a chance he saw it on the bass, but when I did a research how many people were actually playing bass back in those days, not that many. They had like a different instruments. And I believe when I read Bartok's autobiography, I believe he mentioned an instrument called Gordon, which is the one that has one string. You slap it, but you don't produce any notes. So, and you slap it with the left hand, because with the right hand, you keep a bat. So you're hitting the instrument and then you're slapping that one string, which is kind of like, from this perspective, it's very gimmicky, but that was one of the main instruments back then, late 19th century, early 20th century. So they were not playing bass. Whenever I talked to the guys they were playing Romani music in the Balkans, especially in Romania, they would say that bass did not really start to be popular instrument over there until the 70s. and they were, I think that they were more like a few guys. I mean, I can't guarantee this, but like a few guys mentioned that they heard slap from rock and roll people. So they just tried to apply it to their own style. It became really good and then now that thing developed. And a cool thing back in those days, back in 70s during Ceausescu time in Romania, slap bass was forbidden because it was considered gypsy technique. So it was not, it's really hard to find recordings. You really have to meet ethnomusicologists over there or like some librarians to get you some of those and to hear and analyze. But it was kind of, it was really forbidden until Taraf de Haiduks and until all those guys, but that's already early 90s when they started touring, became popular, or late 80s. And at that time, Ceausescu already died. So it was open, and then it was, gypsy music became cool. So about the origins, I would say New Orleans. And if I had to choose one guy, I would choose Bill Johnson, but it's hard for me to think that nobody ever before that anywhere in the world with a bass didn't get an idea to just like slap it instead of using a bow or pizzicato. So as far as the style goes, I would say Bill Johnson. So I'm not going to argue with Ryan. And my favorite actually, I love Bill Johnson, and both Beau and Ryan mentioned Bill Johnson and his work with the bands. But some of my favorite Bill Johnson work is with that priest. I think it's Reverend D.C. Rice or something like that. Those are awesome. It's the people can find it on a compilation. How Low Can You Go? And it's great. And I love that Beau mentioned Lanigan. I love Lanigan as well. That's it.
I wouldn't mind. So as far as that's concerned, that especially that stuff on that third CD from How Low Can You Go? If anyone's really that interested in this stuff, I mean, Djordje is a great resource. He can tell you where all of the I think there was a question in the Q&A from Luca about where you could find all the newspaper articles you're talking about, which I'm sure a lot of that stuff's at Tulane. But the book to go to is, at least for Bill Johnson stuff, is The Pioneers of Jazz by Lawrence Gushee. And you can read through that book and then compare what you read to the stuff that Djordje is referencing, and Josh showed that compilation. The third CD in the How Low Can You Go box is all Bill Johnson, and I would argue that the stuff he's playing between 27 and 29, which is the stuff, all of that stuff on there is between 27 and 29. There it is. It's a good. You can kind of create a really strong argument for what he was playing before, before the Creole band, or before what you hear in the King Oliver band or the Johnny Dodds band, where it's just playing straight quarter notes and kind of what we now think of as early jazz bass lines. But if you hear the stuff in the on that CD, he's basically doing what everybody's calling hokum jazz, and I would argue that that's probably what was happening before recorded jazz, or at least what he was doing with the Creole Orchestra before the recordings. So if that early stuff interests you, I'd hit that. Kevin's smiling and laughing.
Oh, I have a question for Beau. Like, since he mentioned Lanigan, which songs would he recommend for people that are not familiar with Lanigan? And he also mentioned that about the classical. I'm not sure if he played classical bass. I know that he played violin in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I'm not sure if he played bass. And
Lanigan?
So which songs would you recommend for his slap? I know China Boy and Nobody's Sweetheart.
Yeah, there's like there's 4 of those Red McKenzie's Chicagoans. There's a great double CD called the Chicagoans, which actually has a bunch of great slap bass from actually some of them are people that I've never even heard of that are just, I only know them from this this double CD thing. But those 4 are really the go-to. Those, what is it? Nobody's Sweetheart, Sugar, China Boy. What else does he do? I think there are 4 cuts. McKenzie's Chicagoans with and Red McKenzie's not even on it. It's like Jimmy McPartland and the sort of like the Austin High Gang people. Bud Freeman. I'm pretty certain he played in the symphony. I actually got a chance to hang out with his family. They came out to see us play one time, which was like a hit. He was when Marion McPartland died, some of the McPartland family and the Lanigan family, who were close their whole lives, they came out to see the Fat Babies, this band I have here, and I got to correspond with them, and yeah, he played a 5-string bass in the symphony in like the 30s.
Oh wow!
They sent me a bunch of photos actually that I would love to. I'll have to find them somewhere. I have them like in my emails. They emailed me a bunch of great photos of jam sessions and stuff of all these musicians just hanging out in Chicago and jamming. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. When I was researching Lanigan, I found that he was playing classical violin. I didn't get I know that he was playing New Orleans jazz like on bass, but I thought that he was playing only violin.
I didn't know that. I know he played tuba. There's recordings of him playing tuba also, but anyway, yeah, he's great. Have any of you guys seen that double CD thing? I think is only available for like download or something at the moment, but it's like 2 CDs and it's just called the Chicagoans, and it's all these great bands, and there's a lot of great slap bass on it actually.
I have it. It's great.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I get it.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Well, I guess we can move on. I guess, as all of us, we saw our gigs just disappear with the whole coronavirus, and just wondering what everyone's doing to keep your chops up and keeping your calluses, and is there any specific things you're working on? So
my house.
So that first gig back, which I think some of us have had a gig, but I'm sure that first full gig back is going to be a wake up call.
I'm just going to the beach every day.
I spent the first like month really practicing really hard because I had a lot of time, and then I kind of slipped. Actually, this hang was like a motivation over the last week to actually like relearn how to play bass. But yeah, I mean, as far as the stuff I'm working on, I tend to always be working. Something I realized that I kind of changed recently over the last couple of weeks is I tend to always practice classical stuff, etudes and Bach and things like that, and things that I'm not directly applying to my shows, like I mean, I know it helps, but I'm not directly playing these things, and so I kind of let the slap stuff slip more than I should have, and knowing that we were going to do this was actually kind of a nice inspiration to kind of just get the metronome out and just play slap bass for extended stretches of time until my neighbors told me to shut up.
You want to play a little more?
I can. I don't have anything. Boy, I didn't prepare. There's something to think.
Excellent.
Anybody else want to share what they've been working on or playing or not playing or?
Well, I've been for the last, I don't know how many years, I've spent so much time working on traditional country stuff and not in a whole lot of slap. So that's kind of taken over my most of my work time and stuff. So having this time and knowing this was coming up, it's like, okay, I better work on some slaps. So I worked up a couple blisters, which was good. And it's always humbling to come back to it. But it's been kind of nice to get a break from touring and to be able to call all these musicians that I know in town that I know, aren't terribly busy and say, hey, let's, come on over. Let's get together and just sit on the patio and play. So that's been really great. And there's just been 3 or 4, but it's been really gratifying just to sit down and play just for the sake of playing. And so that's been really great. And I hope that answered the question. Was there more to the question?
No, that was it.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been same as Beau, just metronome, clicking away, just running scales, kind of playing hide the metronome, essentially. I'm always playing ahead of it, like I'm always ahead of the beat in all the music I'm playing. So I got to figure out how to beat right on top of it somehow, and that's where I'm at with that. But I've been trying to. I start the day with a whole lot of slow bow and just doing a lot of bow stuff, not Beau Sample stuff, but Arco stuff. Sorry. I'll get that stuff, it gets my left hand warmed up and open, and then I start doing the metronome stuff with the slap, and I kind of just start out just straight plucking quarter notes, and then I'll start just doing rudiments until I'm sick in the head. And that's where I go. And then actually, Josh, Kevin, and I have been. There's so much about like what I'm practicing, and I suppose that's the question. But for me, it's been more about like how I'm practicing, and part of that is like how am I finding the inspiration to practice when I don't have gigs. I'm not getting, like we're not doing this spiritual, we're not part of the cycle right now. Or circle. But Kevin, Josh, and I have been, at least I think we missed the last 2 weeks or so. Oops. But we were going pretty strong there for a little while, just texting each other in the morning going, hey, I'm working on this, and this. By the end of the week, I'll have this. By the end of the day, I'll have this. And then a lot of those days we were checking in at the end of the day going, hey, I actually managed this, and I'm really thankful for both those guys and that process, because it's really helped me kind of like, okay, I'm focused on this is what I'm going to work on today. I don't have to work on everything today. All I need to do is work on that one thing, even if I'm just like, I'm only going to do one melody this week. It's all I'm going to look at. That's been keeping my focus anyway.
Yeah, it's been a good motivator for me for sure. Just to, all right, I can get up here and play, and Ryan's like, I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I need to get my chops. So been inspired to play a lot of Iron Maiden.
I agree, having that accountability with somebody else, being able to say, to text somebody and say, yeah, I didn't do anything at all today, and then the next day to be able to go, yeah, I ran scales for an hour. So just knowing that there's somebody else out there working that you stay in contact with was a huge help, because as we know, all this stuff that's going on can be a major distraction. So that's really been great to have Josh and Ryan knowing that somebody is, people are out there working and doing their thing, and gives you a little motivation.
Yeah, definitely keeps you on your toes. But I know a lot of people want to hear about strings, and I know this is Ryan's favorite, but if y'all could just give us like maybe your rundown of what your gear you're using, your strings, pickup, maybe how high your action is.
But I'll go first so I can
You
get it
can go to
out.
the bathroom, right?
As far as strings go, well, so I have 3 basses. One's a 40s Fretchner. It's got steel. It's actually a set of strings that Kevin gave me. I can't remember what those things were. They sound great on the bass. I don't really play it that much. It's kind of set up to like, I'm going to practice on steel strings with a high action today. It's like swinging 2 bats with 4 weights on them. Then I had the bass I used for the longest time was a 70s Framus. It had Nicolas Cords Lambert's strings on them. The action on that was a little bit lower than where I'm at now, and now I'm on a 64K. I'm using the D and the E, or I'm sorry, the D and the G are Parastro Cordas. They're the thickest gauge guts I can find, like consistently thickest guts. And then the E and the A are Eurosonics. The action is it's pretty much about 20 millimeters. And that there was a question in the Q&A about I think there were a couple of questions about the action, but like Litdu had a question in there we might come back to. I need to go back and with something specific. But anyway, that's where I'm at. High action, guts.
Nice. At least you're not doing at one time, I think you had the G or the D as your G and the A as your D string. Weren't you doing that one time, Ryan?
I think I switched it up, just trying to get a little crazy.
I'm glad you're not doing that anymore. Anyway.
Why? So when I asked you to sit in,
exactly. No one wants to play Ryan's bass.
Why?
Work. Kevin, you want to tell us what kind of gear?
Sure. I'm using I've got a road bass, which is an Upton travel bass, which I really love. It's got the removable neck. For the road gig that I'm currently on, I keep steel strings on it because I need a lot of sustain and really kind of sharp note definition. So I use Tomastic spiral cores on that with the Upton Rev Solo pickup, and I'm running that through an acoustic image preamp into an Ampeg V4B head, which is just a great sounding Ampeg circuit, but only about 100 watts because I don't need that much power. When I'm at home, I keep my old bass strung up with, right now I've got Red Diamond D and G strings, which are a nylon wrapped gut. And those sound pretty good. I've always, ever since, what was it? The Kaplan's Golden Spirals, ever since they quit making those, which was a gut string with a nylon wind on it. They quit making those, and I've been looking to find something close and haven't found anything close. But the Red Diamonds are good, and they do their job. And one of the things about having winding down here in Texas is that the humidity will just destroy your strings. So the E and the A I have on that bass are Pirastro Euduxas, which is a silver wrap on a gut core. And those really just sound great. They sound great with a bow. So either a hybrid gut set or a flat out steel set is what I use.
Nice. Are those the Gamut? The red?
Yeah, the Red Diamond, yeah.
Or Gamut,
yeah.
okay.
There's a guy up in Minnesota who pretty much hand makes strings, I believe. And I like those a lot. And he makes unwound gut strings as well. He makes strings for Baroque instruments. You can request sheep gut or beef gut. It's great. He does cool stuff. It's a really great thing. Good stuff.
Yeah, you got to use beef gut. for Texas for sure.
Djordje, you use all steel, correct?
Yes, I've been using steel strings, all steel, since I basically started playing bass, and it's always been Tomastic. I tried the different Tomastics when I was a kid. First, it was a spiral core, then it was a different also Tomastic, but with black. Um, it's you have a how do you call that? The
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 silk
thread
line.
like yeah. So it was black. So it was you had like a spiral core orchestra was just like a medium, and you had like a light, and at that time you had those hard ones which was black. So I played those in a while, but for a while, but then I think they stopped doing those. Um, and so I've been basically playing Spiracle for a longest time. When I play with Tiger Army, I do play solo gauge because those shows are not that long, but they could be really fast. So I use those, and my choice of strings that I prefer to play and that I play most of the time is the new prototype that Tomastic has been making for the last few years. It's this. Can you see it? Yeah, okay. Um, so those were originally made for people allergic to nickel. You know, when I was talking to those guys at Tomastic, they were like, "Hey, we would like you to try these strings," and they gave me these because they were. I always loved the spiral core because of the note definition, but there's that slight metallic sound that you kind of like want to avoid sometimes. And like with these, I never had that problem because they sound like already they do not sound metallic. And there was another thing, like because of the look, like my bass had like a little gold thing on it, and then these strings are gold, so they kind of like fit on a bass. And I do love steel strings. That's kind of definitely my primary choice because I play with the bow a lot, play pizzicato, and then if you want to play those like bebop lines or like fast and a kind of melodic lines, you want like a fast response, which I cannot get with gut strings. And I love the slap how it sounds with steel, because especially because of the intonation and note definition. And another thing about steel strings, for me, it gives me uh, a chance like not to have a feedback if you play like an arena show or a stadium show or like any kind of like a big show with loud drummer. Then you usually have, I mean, I had problems with different setups, but like with steel strings, I do not have a feedback problem. And that's it as far as strings go. As far as bass, it's a Blaskalt bass. I think it's one of the first that they made. I have two Blaskalt basses, and I have two basses that I keep in Europe, which are kind of classical, like one old 120-year-old Hungarian bass, and another one is some Russian hybrid. And I really like hybrid basses for slap and for the tours in general. This is all plywood, but like that Russian bass from the 50s that I like, it's a carved top and plywood back and sides, which is great in my opinion. And what else? Oh, I use Blaskalt, but like my signature pickup for on this one, but it's made by Blaskalt and EMG. So again, if I play like a big show, I can use a little bit more of that magnetic. And if I play a jazz show in a small club, then just turn off magnetic completely, and I have just piezo. And sometimes I like a tiny bit of that magnetic because you can have more of a sustain. And if you want to slide, if you want to do, you want to hear that like that. You don't want to hear just whoop, and which you usually get with just piezo pickups. And that's pretty much it. I use Coda bows. If anyone asks for bows, I love that one.
We did have a couple questions specifically about how high to put your strings when you are slapping? And I'm sure there's a couple different opinions on this. But anybody want to chime in?
I'm not an expert on that one. I just adjust it until I like it. I don't have a clue.
Because one person, go ahead.
But I do love playing Ryan's bass.
Yeah.
I do love playing, when for that, like old jazz stuff, it's great. You get that punch and you get that swing, and it's awesome. It's very
challenge too.
It's great.
Yeah, for those of you in the chat who aren't familiar with Ryan's bass, it's a source of much fear and intimidation among bass players in town. Yeah. It makes me shrivel up a little bit when I
But it's great. I mean, for that style, you can't beat it. It's really, you have to do it that way, because that's, if you want to sound like Bill Johnson and Steve Browne, that's the setup that you have to use.
Yeah, there's one person. I'm sorry. There's one person in the Q&A that asked mentioned specifically if their action is too low, of course, you can't really grab the string. If it's too high, they have a problem with how stiff it is. Right. So is there anybody who has thoughts about how to find that happy medium when you do set up your bass for slapping?
I think it's
bridge is astounding. It helps a lot. The adjustable bridge that I have has ebony adjusters. A lot of them will have metal. I found that with the ebony adjusters, you don't really have to loosen up the tension of the strings. With metal adjusters, when you adjust the height of the strings, if the bass is tuned up, you run the risk of stripping the wood in the bridge and having to replace your bridge. With the ebony adjusters, for some reason, I haven't had trouble with that. Also, with a travel bass like the Upton that I'm playing, the neck slides into the shoulder of the bass, and there's an Allen wrench that you use, and it slides the neck completely off the bass. So you can take the neck off the bass, but also you can make small adjustments and move the fingerboard out or in towards closer to the body. So you can actually change your action like that. So a travel bass is a great thing to have if you can afford it. That's a great way to your action. But really just finding what is comfortable. I'll find that if I have a couple of weeks where I'm not playing a lot and I go back to playing slap, I'll drop my action a lot. The stronger I get, I'll start raising my action up. So it varies depending on, steel strings, gut strings. Gut strings, I like having a little bit higher action. Steel strings, you can slap steel strings with fairly lower action and still get a pretty good sound. I think that Milt Hinton kind of did that. He would kind of grab from the side, and he had, steel strings with lower action, but he could still get a good, nice, warm punch without having the huge high action on a steel string.
Well, I know you, Kevin, too, when you get ready for a high noon gig, you put steel strings on to get your calluses back, and so you can.
Yeah, blisters. I don't know if you can see. That's a little blister I got from getting ready for this week. Not very big, but proof that I was trying.
I'll pipe in about gear here, and as far as string height, I actually kind of don't mess with my height very much. And in Chicago, it goes up and down quite a bit, but I sometimes find that I like it strangely. Like it's like I like the fact that it's different. It makes me kind of approach playing differently. Maybe it's just laziness, but I find that when it gets more humid and the action goes up, it's got really high action. Then when it goes back down, I think that's really fun too, because then I feel like I can play really easily, relatively. But I have two basses, and they're actually pretty much the same kind of bass. They're both K M1s, and I also use Gamut, just his regular like medium gut for the D and the G, and I like the Pirastro Eudoxas for the E and the A. But I got this bass I was just playing, I got from this great bass player named Beau Neidlinger, and he gave me like a box this big full of roto sounds from the 60s, and they're like the first steel bass strings, and they're pretty different than the roto sounds they make now, but I started using them because they were on there, and now I really like them. They actually sound very similar to the Eudoxes. They don't sound really like metal strings, but they kind of sound like a steel wound gut. And as far as like what I use for amplification, mainly I don't use amplification. I just go acoustically, or I'm mic'd with like a clip-on condenser mic. And then I have like a small amp. I use GK amps and always have. I basically use all the same stuff I've used since I was like 15 years old. It's like, and recently I always used an Eden 410, and I got rid of it when I moved to Chicago, and I haven't played it in forever. And last time I was in Texas, I played Kevin's and came home and like that week bought a David Eden 410. And so the tone is, what's that?
Eden 410 with the GK 800 or 400 RB. I've used that same rig for probably 25 years now or something. And it breaks every 4 or 5 years. I'll have to get some screws tightened in the head. But it sounds amazing. It still sounds amazing. I don't know how that happened.
No preamp too, right? Just straight into the amp. Yeah.
For me, I just go straight in. You too, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, go ahead.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I got my old tone back, and my back is shot. So it's great.
So moving on from the gear stuff, unless does anybody else have any thoughts about that?
I think Nicolas is here.
Okay.
Can you unmute? Can we hear you?
So,
Hey, welcome.
Awesome.
So should we start over?
Yeah, let's start over. All right, take two.
Yeah.
Take
This
10.
time it's for real.
I'm pretty sorry. I had a real problem with my hard disk, and I got to change my PC. Does it work?
It works.
All right.
Perfect.
Oh, nice.
Well, since you're here, do you want to play something or?
Oh,
We
yes,
got you?
for sure. Okay, I got to close my window. Not my real window, not Windows 10. I prepared for you something about syncopation in slap, kind of maybe early jazz, but what I don't remember nothing. It was 1 hour, very difficult for me. Okay, I close the window and I play something for you.
If anybody's not familiar with Nicolas, definitely check out his YouTube channel. He's got some amazing stuff.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Is it good for you?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sounded good to me, man.
Can you hear me?
Excellent.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Just to see something about one weird technique. Last week I dropped on Facebook one video named tingling technique. You know, it's a what I played there is same kind of thing, but with a slap aided on it. Just to show you a little closer.
Excellent.
Very nice. I'm glad we could get you on here for sure. Do any of y'all have questions for him? Anybody?
So I have something that kind of a couple people asking that Nicolas might be able to answer. So a couple people asked about warm-ups and practice routines, specifically how they relate to left hand speed and keeping your right hand loose.
In my opinion, right. Sorry, I'm left-handed. Okay, so you say right. You said about right technique for me is left.
Right. So
I got to talk about the hand on the fingerboard and the slap hand. Okay. For me, the hand on the fingerboard is very, very important. That the hand with which one you mute the note, you control, you put some accent. This hand is very important. Slap hand is very important too. If you got the good combination between both, you can much more control the sound of your bass.
Yes. Nice.
I have a question for Nicolas.
Kevin?
Demonstrate the Willie Dixon quadruplet that you showed, because that was something that I know I struggled with for a long time. I could not figure out how he did it.
Cannot figure it out.
And then you put your video up, and I was like, "Oh man, it's so good! It's perfect." So
thanks, Kevin. I really dig your style, and it's a great honor for me. The quadruplet, I spent a long time. It was before internet. Just hearing tapes or CDs, and no slow motion, no nothing. It was really bad. How did he play this? And I finally figured out that it was two double slaps with the note in between muted. C'est ta pa pa taka taka tak. You want me to show it slowly?
Yes, please.
Yeah. It's you go boogie in C. When you are between A and up C, here is where is the quad slap. It's two double with one note muted. From A to up C.
Thank you very much. My style of playing is based on a totally different thing. So getting to a quadruplet for me was I just never could figure it out. So thank you for showing. That's excellent.
You're welcome.
Yes, we've had many bass hangs where we try to figure that out for sure. I can remember Kevin and Ryan and Chris Wade. We went out to your house one time, and it was between you, Ryan, and Kevin trying to figure out Joe Zinkin, and it turned out to a bass trade-off. It was pretty amazing. But that was the whole 16 note and all that stuff.
I remember seeing a very specific twinkle in Kevin's eye. and then it was all a blur.
Yeah. That stuff, man, it's like I said, I have this specific style that I learned, and it was, pre-internet, so I didn't know what I was doing. And so I learned how to do this thing, and it's kind of based almost on, it's all triplets or whatever. So that kind of stuff it was completely out of my my mind. I couldn't figure it out. And somebody wrote that was also similar to the riff in the little bass runs in "Move It On Over" by Hank Williams. And that's another one of those licks where you listen to it and go, man, I have no idea how they're doing it. It's so fast and it's so clean. And I don't know if Nicolas has studied that one or if anybody has, but it might be a similar thing. But that's one of the things that excites me so much about this specific style of playing, is that things will be, a band will be moving along, and then something like that jumps out, and it's just instant little jolt of adrenaline that I get from hearing that, going, oh, that was cool, man. That's the stuff that's exciting to me about slap bass. That's what I enjoy.
I've heard different guys try to figure out this Willie Dixon quadruplet. Some sound good, but I'm not pretty sure. There is a kind of triplet with one note before, something like that. But there is one only video I found at YouTube with Willie Dixon, and you can really see his hand like this. He put it like this and played taka-paka-pak. There is one video like this, so that's why I'm pretty sure it was this technique. But it can be another. It could be maybe Willie Dixon played different techniques for his quad.
I'm pretty sure it's that technique that you just showed us for Willie Dixon. And the song that Kevin mentioned, I think, Moving On Over, I think it's just regular quadruple slap, not the one with the muted. But the lick that really get me excited, which Kevin also mentioned, like when you're thinking, what are they playing, is the one from You Mostest Girl.
I remember.
By Bobby Lee Trammell. That's the one that really impresses me. And it's one of those like, oh, how did they do this? And interesting thing, I think that song was recorded in 1972. And like slap bass was not cool in those years, especially not in a country world or rock world. So
There are
so
at least
that's the one that blows my mind.
track as well. There's at least two different tracks. One has that lick and one doesn't. And that is definitely one of those licks. It's like, I have no idea what the guy's doing. It's so good.
Does someone figure it out? You must go.
Djordje, did you figure that out?
I did not. You know, it was like a long time when I was like, oh, what should I do this? And I was like, oh, okay, this is let
I
this
remember
guy be
you.
his own thing. And I'm still not 100% sure who actually played that. The closest I got, I think I'm pretty sure it's Joe Zinken, but he was never credited. And I called Bobby Lee Tremel to ask. He didn't know. He told me to call DJ Fontana and Scotty Moore. I was on tour with Deke at that time, so Deke was good friends with both of them, and I think I played with both of them on the same tour. So we asked them. Scotty was it Bill Black? Well, like, no, Bill died in 1965. This song is from the 70s, and DJ Fontana gave us a few names, but it was just regular Nashville session guys like Light and Chance and somebody else, I forgot. And I'm pretty sure that the only one that would be capable to do technically to be to play that lick and that song, that whole song is great, not just that pattern when you can hear just bass by itself. I'm pretty sure it's Joe Zinken. I never heard him playing that produced and precise like he did it, like the bass on that record, but it's amazing. I mean, I don't know, that's like one of the best rockabilly bass I ever heard, for sure.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, excuse me. There is something mentioned on all the Eddie Cochran album. There is mentioned slap box. Have you ever seen this? Maybe it's a combination of double bass and slap box.
No, I haven't.
I'm not familiar with the term.
No, I have seen this on an old Eddie Cochran record. There is slap bass and slap box.
Huh.
It could be a combination. I don't know.
But still, maybe if it's Eddie Cochran, you know, considering that Eddie Cochran died, like, you know, a decade before You Must As Girl was recorded, I doubt that they would be using the same thing.
It's not the same.
But who knows?
But sometimes they could add on the record a kind of slap box. I don't know.
Maybe like a percussion.
You Must As Girl.
That's one of those things that's to me is kind of, you know, kind of mysterious. Like I had talked to some older bass players in Austin, and they said that they would take their E string and just detune it really far down to try to get the slap sound like that. And I tried it, and I couldn't get anything out of it. It didn't make sense to me for sure. But on a Merle Haggard song called "I Think We're Living in the Good Old Days," there's and Joe Zinken is listed on the track, and as well as another bass player. I'm not sure who the other one is, but in the intro there sounds like slap bass, but it sounds like it could possibly be a bass with the strings detuned. It's one of the weirdest slap things I've ever heard, and I don't know what else it could possibly be. So I don't know if somebody out there gets bored and they want to listen to I Think We're Living in the Good Old Days by Merle Haggard. There's a couple little breaks with that weird kind of slap bass thing. And all I can figure is that they do have the strings detuned.
Yeah, quite a few people were using that technique. I think mostly in the bluegrass world, like Jake Tulloch. Like I read that he was using that, but I'm not sure because that didn't come from him directly. And first time I heard about that technique was in a Guitar Player magazine. I think it's from the 80s. that Paul Burleson of Rock and Roll Trio was talking about Dorsey Burnett using that, and which might be a possibility. You know, those Dorsey Bob Moore recordings are kind of also mysterious in a way. Even we now are pretty certain who played which song, and you can hear it, but like apparently Dorsey used that technique as well.
So while we're, and I'm sorry, this is all great stuff. I just want to try and kind of get as many of the commonly asked questions in as I can. So a lot of people asked about your favorite recordings, or I would maybe direct that more towards slap bass albums or songs that you would consider essential listening. So for those of you who are taking notes at home, some people we discussed already are Bill Johnson, Willie Dixon, the How Low Can You Go anthology, things like that. But maybe beyond just that, who are some of, maybe we can go around and ask everybody who are your favorite players, or what are some recordings you consider essential in the style. So we can start with Kevin, maybe.
You're muted. You're muted, Kevin.
Mike Bub just wrote on here that Junior Husky played on a bunch of Merle Haggard's recordings. And he is right. I spoke wrong. It wasn't Joe Zinkin on that track. It is definitely Junior Husky. What was the question you asked, Alex?
So what are some of your recordings that are, what are some slap bass recordings that might be your favorite, and or what you would consider essential listening to maybe the beginner or intermediate person trying to get into slap bass?
Yeah, that's hard to say as far as beginners and intermediate. I'm not sure. You know, of course, the Stray Cats stuff and the Elvis, Scotty, and Bill stuff is so great. And there's so much old Western swing and old string band music that has amazing slap bass stuff on it. My personal favorite kind of stuff that I enjoy, I mean, I love hearing a crazy solo, but I also love when slap bass becomes a specific part of the arrangement. There's a ukulele Ike tune called Halfway to Heaven that has this amazing slaps, intro and outro. It's just really, really great. Halfway to Heaven by Ukulele Ike. Cliff Edwards was his name. So that one's really great. And then there's another one by Farron Young called I Hear You Talking. And I'm guessing that's probably Bob Moore. But I'm not sure. It could be Zinkin or you know, any number of guys. But it's got this really kind of funky, almost rumba kind of feel through. And then when they get to the chorus, it drops into a straight 2/4 feel. And it's, to me, that's how slap bass is most effective, when you're doing something and you can completely change up the feel, and it goes from this kind of funky kind of thing into this great smooth 2/4. And that's really exciting as well. It's like, wow, the entire song opens up. So that's some of the stuff that I really, but also, of course, old Western swing, Bob Wills.
How about Djordje next? You want to go?
Sure. Well, if I have to choose like one recording, like it would probably be Steve Browne and Dinah. That being like the first one that where slap is very dominant. So and when I heard that one, I was just blown away, because I realized that the whole that like slap world that I'm not very familiar with. Another recording that I love is Vlad Virel with Tarav de Haiduks, especially the song Turceska. And that's something that I'm really impressed with. But you know, there's like so many essential recordings: Willie Dixon, Milt Hinton, all those guys. I mean, even Joe Zinkin, especially Pops Foster, like, you know, like everybody should listen and everything, you know, like even like psychobilly as well. You know, people that are into old jazz usually are not, I mean, even people that are into old rockabilly are not into psychobilly. So you have, you know, a great psychobilly players. And I think that listening to all of that kind of really can create a different and a new style that can that will be kind of like merged. And so if I had to choose one, Steve Browne, Dinah.
Nice. Oh, there's Mike Bub. Welcome you. You're muted, by the way.
How about
There we go. Hey, welcome. Glad you could join us.
Hey, this is awesome, man. Where'd you guys come from?
We're all looking for gigs. You got one?
I just had my first gig in 3 months. Friday night, I played with Sturgill Simpson at the Ryman. We did a live bluegrass live stream, and it was the first time I played in 3 months. My calluses are gone, everything's gone, but it's coming back. We did 3 days in the studio, then we did that live stream. So time to get back to it.
Get those calluses back for sure.
Oh man, my pinky, this big pad I worked on for years, it's gone. It just left me. So.
I was noticing usually when I flip tortillas in the pan, they don't hurt. But the other day I was doing that and it actually hurt. What?
Well, I don't know if you want to chime in on any of this, Mike. We were just talking about records that we'd love to hear, like just slap and influence us.
I'm sorry we missed Jerry McCurry on here. You know,
we tried to get him in.
I refer to him as the last of the great blue collar bluegrass men on the bass. You know, blue collar bluegrass bass men. And you know, I borrowed a lot of stuff from him. And you know, I always say that if you're going to play raw music, whether it's blues or jazz or bluegrass, in the rawest form, you have to have sort of a raw technique when you do it. You know, you can't have a perfect technique. Otherwise, it doesn't have that sort of quality that you want to get out of it, you know. And he is the perfect example of that. I mean, the way that he plays, you know, he frets the bass a lot like this with his thumb all the way around. And he has big hands like hams, you know, and he switches from the slap and he plays up and down this way, but he also snaps the strings. And if you ever get on this live tape thing called Sugar Megs, there's a recording of Jerry McCurry playing with John Hartford in 1996 at the Gray Fox Bluegrass Festival. And there might be a couple other concerts from that era, but just for a little while, he was playing in a trio with John Hartford and Mike Compton on the mandolin. And they played around one microphone, and you can just really hear Jerry's technique and all the things that he does, like the way that he could triple slap through a waltz time, and just how he would change from playing behind a soloist to playing behind a vocal, you know, just transitioning all that stuff. And, you know, he learned from all the guys that came before, like George Shuffler and Jake Tulloch, who got mentioned before. And so those are kind of the guys that he got his sound from. And boy, he can still do it. He's one of my favorites.
What recording was that? It was a Sugar what?
It's on sugarmegs.com. That's it's a website full of live recordings of all kinds. You wouldn't believe how many live recordings are on there. And if you just search John Hartford, a big list will come up, and just go to 1996 Gray Fox or Winter Hawk Bluegrass Festival, and you'll see 2 shows there. Those are 2 that I know of that you can hear, but they're live, and so you get to really hear the way that he approached playing in that bluegrass setting. You know, it's just fantastic.
Everyone's taking notes right now, like
big
fiercely.
sound. Big sound.
I would also recommend from Jerry the Bluegrass Twist that he played on the album Early Dog. WG.
He was just a teenager back then.
Yeah, that's a good example of his slap.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had him in. We just had some technical difficulties. I don't know. We'll do another one of these hopefully. So
good. And
you'll be invited too. So you'll have to shoot me your email privately if you want.
Well, I learned everything I know about slap bass from Kevin Smith and Jerry McCurry, pretty much. You know, so.
I know Kevin is
great.
Go ahead, Beau.
I was going to say there's also those great John Hartford videos with Roy Husky Jr. playing on.
Of course, yeah.
Those are really fantastic.
Yeah, Roy. You know, if Roy was here, I would have about maybe a tenth of the work that I have now. Because Roy pretty much was the guy, you know, he was the first call guy. He did all the television, all the big session work. And, you know, really, if you look at the late 90s country music, or all the way through the late 90s, Roy was on all those Alan Jackson records. Even the later George Jones records, they all still had upright on them, and Roy played on all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I played his bass one time at the Opry. I was playing, they used to have these matinee shows at the Grand Ole Opry during the week when Opryland was still an amusement park. And it was on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they would have people come in to get out of the heat into the air conditioning. So they would have these little mini Grand Ole Oprys during the afternoon. And I was out there one day just hanging out with the Osborne. My roommate played with the Osborne brothers. And their bass player, Terry Smith, who's also another fantastic guy, upright player, and can actually really play a lot of good slap stuff. He got the wrong time or something. And so Sonny Osborne says, go out there and ask Junior if you can use his bass. And, you know, I should have just let Roy play with him instead of trying to play his bass. And I asked him, and Roy was just the sweetest guy in the world. He was a very unique person, unique personality. And I asked him, I said, Roy, I said, I don't think Terry Smith's going to get here in time. Would you mind if I used your bass and play with the Osborne? Well, of course you can, you know. Well, I never laid hands on his bass before. And I was used to playing a K, and of course he played an American Standard with the action really high and gut strings. I was a Tomastic guy forever. And I just got a hold of this bass, and I was playing to this gigantic Ampeg tube amp that they have on stage at the Opry at that time, and it was horrendous. It was probably the worst you could ever imagine. Matter of fact, Sonny Osborne told me, he said he was glad it wasn't on the radio.
I'm sure we've all had those gigs. I'm sure.
Oh
right?
my gosh! But his bass was a real bear. But he was the kind of guy that he knew how to get the sound out of it, you know. And he was such a slender, sort of slight guy to get such a big sound. And the last time I saw him play was at Merle Fest in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, with Sam Bush. And it was just Jerry Douglas and Sam Bush and Roy and Larry Adamandiuk on drums. And I think they must have had a guitar player. I can't remember who it was, but Roy just played on a microphone. He played over a Beyer 88, and the sound of his bass on that stage is nothing I've ever heard before. Just playing over a microphone. Incredible. Just incredible. He knew how to play against the sound system. You know, he could adjust his hands and his playing to everything, to a room, to a stage, to whatever, PA system. He had a sixth sense about sound and that sort of thing. Very intuitive guy.
What's a good go-to record for people that haven't listened to much of Roy Huskey Jr.?
Well, he's on so many. I don't know. You know, as far as slap bass goes, I wouldn't be able to steer you to any place particular, because a lot of times you'll find that a lot of slap players don't use that on a recording unless,
right,
especially if there's a drummer involved. You know, usually if there's no drummer, then you might hear some slap. But Roy did a lot live, because a lot of times he was playing acoustic gigs. There was no drummer. But I would say any Peter Rowan record from the mid to late 80s, any of those sort of great traditional bluegrass records from that mid 80s or on, you know.
Yeah,
and of course his dad played on, Junior played on Will the Circle Be Unbroken, which is another great, you know, just sort of collection of great acoustic song material, repertoire, and artists all together, you know, which is, and his bass is real prominent in there too. There's about 4 different mastered versions of that album. And if you can find the last one, that's the one to get. That's the one that's got the bass turned up on it. That's what John McEwen told me anyway.
That's the good one, right?
Yeah.
Speaking about bluegrass slapping, I mean, I kind of learned how to play upright with the bluegrass, playing bluegrass in Ohio, and it's funny how some, you know, you have the traditionals, people that don't want slap, and you have like a Jerry or you were just like, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. I wonder what your thoughts on all that was.
Well, it has a place, and that's the hard part for most people to learn. You know, there's a difference between a slap and, say, a snap of the string, just like snapping the string, which I do a lot too. And that's just that early jazz sound, like you guys were talking earlier about, you know, Milt Hinton and those guys that played on the early jazz recordings. It just seemed like they were snapping those strings so hard just to get heard over maybe 2 or 3 microphones is all they had in the studio back then. And if you look at those old videos where there's usually a mic in the vicinity of the rhythm section or the bass, just to cut through the horn section, you know, you see them just snapping the strings. If you listen to any early Bill Monroe music of the 40s, it's all swing oriented, you know. It's sort of a picture of the era, you know. You could think what they were hearing on the radio and pop music was all big band music and swing jazz and that sort of thing. And so that all entered into it. And so a lot of those early bass players played a lot of walking bass and snapping or slapping the strings and that sort of thing. It kind of lost favor for sure, because as the music sort of developed and became more, you know, I don't know, for lack of a better word, urbanized or whatever, maybe some of that stuff went away. But you do hear a lot of walking bass in the early bluegrass. You know, George Shuffler was all over the neck of the bass, and with the Stanley Brothers. And it takes a certain rhythm and a certain sound. So when I joined Del McCoury, I just borrowed some stuff from Jerry and put it with what I was doing. And they have a sort of a rockabilly attitude in their music. It's a different sound and different kind of timing that they all have together. And when you hear those guys all play together, it's very much like a rockabilly attitude, or even punk rock sound. You know, it has that just aggressive sound to it. Not all bluegrass is like that. You know, some of it has been smoothed out over the years, but there's not just a lot of those guys left, you know, that play in that style. I mean, hardcore traditional bluegrass is really you know, becoming a distant memory nowadays, because all the first generation guys are pretty much gone, you know.
Yeah.
I heard on that point, I've only heard Jerry play once live, and it was such a powerful experience for me, because like I came out of a bluegrass tradition, sort of like the first band I was in was a punk bluegrass band, and we went up and down the East Coast doing the fiddle picnics and all of that sort of thing. And I'd have like 50% of the old guys would be like, "What in the hell are you doing? Don't ever do that again." And then the other 50% were just like beside themselves, singing my praises and like, "Please keep doing that because nobody else is doing it."
Right.
And then I did a short tour with a bluegrass band from England a couple of years ago, whatever. We played the Delaware Valley Bluegrass Festival in New Jersey, and it was when Jerry was doing the Masters of Bluegrass thing with Bobby Osborne and Del, and it was ridiculous. I was super excited. I actually didn't even know Bobby Osborne was still alive. I was excited for the band itself, and I'd never really heard Jerry live other than a couple of videos. And there he was in front of me, and I knew his vocabulary was so extremely familiar to me from a jazz standpoint, not from that bluegrass standpoint where I started, but from, you know, nearly 20 years of playing Pops Foster and Al Morgan, and everything he was doing was just like, well, how do I know what you're about to do? And then at the end, I went over and talked to him, and he knew who Pops Foster and Al Morgan were. Like, I was asking him for this same question that Josh is asking, like, who were these old guys that you were listening to that all of these other old timers that are listening to me say existed, and I've never heard of, I can't find them on record. And he went down a whole list and asked me what I was doing, and I said playing 20s and 30s jazz, and he's like, "Oh, you mean like Pops Foster and Al Morgan?" And I was like, "Oh my God, how do you know these guys?" And that made total sense. But listening to his playing is like what you're saying. It's just so, it's got an old school thing to it, and it's really, I love listening to him play.
For me, bluegrass is kind of great, like for slap. You know, when I first moved to the States, it was in San Francisco, and mostly first couple of years I played strictly with bluegrass bands, and I went to any bluegrass show that I could see, including yours, Mike Bub, at Great American Music Hall where we met.
Uh-huh.
And first time I heard about it was from Mark Rubin in Serbia. He told me, you should check out these guy. He gave me a song that I should find that I never found, like Traffic Light or something, where it was kind of representing your technique. But, you know, I would like, you know, since you joined us kind of late, you know, I would like you to mention like any kind of recordings that would be kind of representative for your own technique. I particularly like Texas Eagle that you recorded with Steve Browne.
Yeah.
And there was like a couple of songs also with Del McCurry that you had kind of like a small slap sections that you did. And somebody mentioned Roy Husky slap playing. And I would like to point out to the song, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I think it's Stooges or something like that. And it's Stogies. And it's the duo that he recorded with Mark Schatz.
Yeah, Stogies. It's called Stogies.
Stogies. Okay, so Stogies.
Those are cigars.
And then one. It's a pretty good example for besides those TV appearances from Roy Husky. I think that one is kind of like the best example for his slap playing.
Yeah, excellent.
Hey, that's funny. As a French guy, I started music at 13 years old by playing bluegrass. Because in my small city, there were an association of bluegrass player. There were old guys of 30 years old when I was 13, and they asked me to play with them. I did, and I start slapping. They don't like it, oh. And I got only one recording, one vinyl. It was a Country Gazette. You know this band?
Country who?
Gazette.
Oh, Country Gazette, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they were slap. I don't know the name of the bass player, but he played slap.
Well, the early stuff was a guy named Roger Bush, who was kind of best known for the Kentucky Colonels with Clarence and Roland White. And he had a real unique technique too, where he would take the E string and he would slack it all the way down. He wouldn't even play on it, and it would just be loose. And he would hit that as a sort of a percussive sound. And that's what you hear a lot in his playing, is that sort of slack E string just sort of rattling underneath this technique, you know. And I only met him once or twice, but I saw him play a couple times, and I said, oh, that's what he's doing. He's not using the E string except for percussion, you know.
Yeah, we were talking about that technique that quite a few people used it, but it was kind of like for none of us. I mean, for me, kind of like never made too much sense, because you would rather use that extra string to play some notes. But another thing, like since you're here, like that, you know, I wanted to mention as far as bluegrass. Do you know at what point slap kind of became forbidden technique in bluegrass? I know that I think that first recordings that Bill Monroe did at that hotel with, I think it's Cousin Wilbur on the bass, that they were Tennessee Waltz and like a couple of those. Cousin Wilbur is using slap. And then, so basically first bluegrass recordings were recorded with slap bass.
Yeah.
And then you have like, you know, Flat and Scruggs with Jake Tulloch, that they played like all those amazing solos. I love his recordings from the Carnegie Hall. I think that's early 60s. Mm-hmm. And then I hear all those stories from bluegrass people like, oh, Bill Monroe was cutting fingerboards because he hated slap. Is that true, or it's not true, or how did that work? And when
I guess maybe
slap became a bad word.
I guess maybe some people were threatened by it, you know, as far as the musicality of it, you know. Again, it's just like traditional jazz, you know, it kind of grew into, it started in that raw form and trying to provide solid rhythm. And if you listen to those early Bill Monroe records, there was a guy named Amos Guerin who played bass with him. And as I often say, he never successfully negotiated a chord change in his life. But, you know, the beat was there, but the chords were missing a lot of times, you know. A lot of times that early Bill Monroe stuff is just sort of cued on the vocals, the chord changes. You know, you have to follow what he's singing to know when to change chords. It didn't have any specific, a lot of times a specific pattern or whatever. But, you know, Tom Gray is another guy who's a great bass player who was in the Country Gentlemen. And he, you know, they were sort of the urban bluegrass band that kind of brought in other songs from outside material. Now he walked a lot. He played in like Dixieland bands and stuff, but he had kind of a refined style, and he didn't really slap that much. But I think as the music sort of got less raw and it kind of smoothed out, you know, the music really changed through the years to become, you know, like most early music, you know, it just changes. And I just guess it just fell out of favor, maybe in the 60s at some point, or maybe the 70s, when the music sort of changed or kind of grew outward from the real sort of traditional sound, you know. And then there was a long period in the 80s where everybody played electric bass, where the electric bass was really prominent in bluegrass.
Yeah, we don't talk about electric bass here. Sorry.
And then it made a turn back to acoustic in the 90s, and all these bands that had electric for years, like the Osborne Brothers, went back to an upright bass, you know, and because you can't get that sound with anything else, you know, you really can't.
I love Tom Gray. You mentioned Tom Gray. I think that Grandfather's Clock is a good example for his playing that he recorded with at least a couple of bands. I met him in DC. I think he lives in DC. He might be watching actually. He was commenting on this, so it's great.
Nice.
Yeah, and then there's who was I going to mention? Well, you guys were talking about Joe Zinkin earlier. You know, Joe Zinkin started playing on riverboats in the 30s, and he came to Nashville to play with Roy Acuff, and I think he came here in 39 or 40 to play with Roy Acuff. Now, eventually became a staff player at the Opry, and then was, you know, top session guy. A lot of people don't know that it's actually he's actually playing on most of those Ray Price records. A lot of those shuffles. A lot of people think it's Bob Moore, but it's more often than not it's oh hell, I lost his name already.
Joe Zinkin.
Joe Zinkin, yes. And you know, it'd be interesting to talk to Kent Blanton, because he has Joe's old bass and was good friends with him. We call him Superman.
Yep.
And beautiful old bass.
Yeah, we've had him part of the bass hang like years ago, and so I'm sure we'll get another one, get him on here.
Now, one person I know that probably never slapped was with Bob Moore. I don't think he ever did.
You guys heard that Scherzo and Slap or whatever it is by Tupper Saucy?
That's the best one. That's the best.
That's
yes.
amazing.
Do you know anything about Tupper Saucy?
I do. He sounds like a character.
Fascinating character in Nashville. Yeah, he quit paying his taxes for years. He wrote a book about liberties and how, I don't know. I got into it for a little while, and I was asking. I used to visit with Bob Moore every once in a while, and I'd ask him about him, you know. And he was a brilliant composer, you know, and they made these improvisational records and very outside kind of stuff. But he was also outside as far as, you know, his political thinking. And there's some interesting videos on YouTube with him, actually an interview with him on YouTube.
Really?
Look him up on there, yeah. The federales came after him because he didn't pay his taxes for like, I don't know, 10, 15 years because he thought it was illegal.
That's amazing. Well, we're having a great time, but we've been at this for a couple hours, so we probably should start wrapping it up. First of all, I was going to do.
You know, can I say?
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to do.
I'm sorry, just because.
Go ahead.
But just before we go, I wanted to mention like a couple of other blues players before we go, like Ransom Knowling on like a lot of the Bluebird Chicago blues stuff, and also like Big Crawford on the Old Muddy Waters stuff. That's like a big influence that should probably be mentioned before we wrap it up, I think, you know, as far as blues stuff.
Never enough time.
That's
for
all.
Sure. Yes. Thanks. But I was just going to do a screenshot. So ready? 3, 2, 1. cheese. All right. And the people at home, if you want to say where you're from, you can do that. I'm just curious to see where everyone's coming from. If you want to chat it in there. I guess the last thing we could do is, if there's something you want to promote or just what you've been doing to keep your mind sane, I guess. And we'll have Ryan play us out. And I appreciate everyone coming. And you can see all the people from everywhere.
Lots of people.
Yeah.
Lots of people all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start this final thing. So I kind of stopped with Slap Bass Sundays and all the YouTube things, but I'm going to switch to Slapstream, which I plan to start doing next week, which I want to have kind of like a one-on-one, like with bass players that I admire, that I think that have something to say. And I want to interview, like, and kind of give, kind of like use this slow COVID-19 time, like to kind of promote art of slap bass more, and like all these great players, which hopefully I'll have like all of you as guests at one time. And so that's kind of like my primarily focus, and that's what I'm excited the most. And like just putting out the new music, and that's it. Whoever is interested in Slapstream, then just go to my Bullfiddle Cat YouTube channel. And thanks, guys, for doing this. This is amazing. I love it.
It's a great day. And still waiting for your History of Slap Bass book, Djordje, I think.
Oh man, I've been doing that for such a long time, but it's yeah, I wrote like 150 pages so far, and then I'm like kind of perfectionist, like one point I was like, nobody gonna read this, it's just gonna be like 20 people into it. Like, should I like put this out or not? And I just started touring like crazy, and then I should be doing that more and this, so I should be putting more effort into that. I mean, I'll finish it before I die, I promise. But for now, Slapstream is the first thing.
Slapstream, cool. Check it out. I guess, Nicolas, you're next on my screen if you want to promote anything or tell you what we've been doing lately.
Oh no, I just want to promote anything but slap bass for sure. I'm pretty sorry to have missed the first part and to not see you playing. But you say the session is recorded? There will be a replay somewhere?
It is recording, yes.
Yes.
So
I can hear you feels.
I'll send it to you for
playing.
sure.
It was a real great joy for me to hear you playing, but I couldn't. Sorry for my PC. And thank you very much for this great happening.
Well, I'm glad you could make it. I saw in the comments too. I think Kitch Ramore was here, which we.
Hello, Sophia.
So glad to see that.
How does she find the time?
I guess, Beau, you're next on my screen if you want to.
Yeah, I don't really have big surprise. I got nothing to promote really. I think I have one gig. I got a gig with Robbie Folks coming up, and that's all in my books. I'm just thankful that you had me, and I'm just gonna. I have a new kid on the way, so we're preparing for that, and I got 2 other kids, so I'm pretty busy working on the house, taking care of the kids, practicing, doing all that stuff. So
hopefully they'll like slap.
Yeah, they better. But yeah, it was an honor to be involved, and nice to see you guys again.
Appreciate it. Well, Mike, you're next on my screen if you want to say something or.
Everything's been canceled so far, I guess, until about maybe Labor Day. So I don't know. We'll see what happens for the rest of the year. I just made a record with Sturgill Simpson, a bluegrass album, and he loved it so much. We're going to go back in and cut 8 more songs this next weekend. So be looking for that on the horizon. That's going to come out probably sometime in the fall. And but that's all I got. Just been playing with Tim O'Brien, and I play with Rob Ikes and Trey Hensley, and we'll actually be playing tomorrow night, or let's see, not tomorrow night, Thursday at the Station Inn live stream on stationintv.com, and that's about the only thing I got coming up. So rest of the time I'll be hanging on the lake here. I just bought a boat, so trying to make the best of it.
Nice. Doing some grilling too, right?
And yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm glad we could pop you in and
yeah, thank you for pulling me in. I enjoyed listening to you guys. I really did learn a lot. So
I'm sure we'll plan on doing another one. So you're definitely invited. I guess Kevin, you're next on my screen.
Okay. I don't know when I'm going to be back out on the road, to be honest with you. You know, we'll just see when that happens. I miss being out on the road, and I miss playing with the family out there for sure. Really huge thanks to Mike Bub, man. It was great to see you again. It's been too long, and you contributed so much just right there. It was so wonderful. So thank you. And thank you all for being here. I believe I'm going to be a guest on Djordje's slap stream thing coming up pretty soon. So I'm excited about that. And who knows what's going to happen, but you know, I'm still, whether I'm playing in clubs or not, I'm playing with folks at the house, and it's just, I think as we all are, we're all grateful to have this in our lives, and I'm grateful to y'all for being here. It was a great experience. So thank y'all.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, and thanks Alex for helping us with all the questions, and thanks Ryan for organizing it and being the person that got us all together. And I guess Ryan, if you want to say something and just play us out, it'd be great.
Sure, yeah. Definitely thanks to Josh and Alex for hosting and manning the Q&A and keeping us focused. Thanks to Kevin and Beau for starting this whole thing with me. You know, Kevin, I'm pretty sure this was your idea.
Yeah.
Let's just give you the credit anyway.
We might as well. He's kind of the thread that holds us all together anyway, right?
More or less, yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry, real quick before you wrap up, Josh, do you have any plans to make this recording available after this?
Yeah, we will try to do something for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know where yet, or is that still TBD?
I have no idea. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we'll post it on stuff on social media and all that.
Sure. Okay.
For sure.
Where was I? Yeah. I was thanking Kevin and Beau for getting this going, and I can't believe it's been almost 20 years. And thanks for Josh jumping in the last like 5 or so years, nailing it. These bass hangs have been so great. It's been a wonderful community building exercise for us. I feel like Austin's bass community, at least within the folks that have been coming and hanging with us every month, you know, and now every week, it's just, I think it's helped the community a lot, and I'm really happy about that. And then on the national community side of the house for slap bass, Djordje's knocked it out of the park.
Yes.
If you're not familiar, please go and check out Artist Slap Bass. The website. There's an Instagram and a Facebook thing. Djordje's got loads of interviews up there. We're trying to get some more written content up there, and that'll take it. I think almost every one of us on this panel has been up there. Yeah. As for what I'm doing, kind of the same as everyone else. Just renovating the house, painted the bathroom, painted the bedroom, some huge garden projects going on.
Mike's really busy. You're full on.
Mike, I got some stuff, you know, once you're done there. Yeah, other than not having any gigs, I'm sure I'll be back to it eventually. I'll go ahead and play us out if that's the thing.
And while you're grabbing your bass, we might want to mention that we're going to put up a PayPal. Don't give us too much money, but $1 or $2 or something, just so that we can afford to pay for the Zoom membership and that kind of stuff. That would like I said, don't give us too much money, but $1 or $2 would be great. I don't know how PayPal works, if they can do $1 or whatever. But thank everyone especially thank everybody who attended and sat here for a couple hours listening to this stuff. That's just astounding and exciting. So thank y'all.
And look forward to Bass Summit #2. All right, Ryan.
Oh yeah.
Is that working?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
Very nice. Perfect way to end the day. Thanks, y'all. And we'll see you around. Stay tuned for the video, and everyone stay safe out there.